Hello everyone, my name is Leo, and if you follow our channel you know that we have done several videos about latency. For instance, one video comparing 23 amp modelers, one specifically dedicated to the camper player, etc. This new video is fully focused on the new ToneX ONE latency management, also checking out what it is gonna happen to latency when you stack multiple ToneX ONE together or when you use it in conjunction with its bigger brother, the ToneX pedal. Let's start. First of all, if you want more info about latency and how I have measured it, you can check out my 23 amp modeling pedalboard latency comparison video following the link in the card above. With this out of the way, let's jump straight to the results. If we use the ToneX ONE in stomp mode and we activate it with the profile of an OCD distortion pedal, we have 1.2 milliseconds of latency, which is a very good value. On the other hand, if we switch the pedal off, the latency does not change, but stays at 1.2 milliseconds. Now, 1.2 is a very good value, but the fact that it does not change if we switch the pedal off is not a good news, as, in my opinion, it means that the ToneX ONE is not a sort to say true bypass pedal, meaning that even if it is switched off, your tone goes through some ADA conversion, which somehow deteriorate our tone. On paper, the converters in this unit should be very good, with 123 dB of dynamic range. But well, it would be better if switched off, the pedal did not affect our tone and did not add latency, especially in the case we want to stack many ToneX ONE each after the other. Now, if we add the reverb, the compressor or the noise gate inside this pedal, the latency does not change, which is a very good news. Another test I have done is to use different profiles of amps or profiles of distortion pedals, and I have noticed a very little latency variation of about 0.1 or 0.2 milliseconds, which is basically nothing. And this is a good news, as it means that we can safely use whatever profile we want without caring too much about latency variations. Let's move on with another test. A pretty strange behavior I have noticed is that if we connect the unit to a computer via USB, well, we have a variation in the latency. Actually, it gets a little bit worse. In fact, where the latency was 1.2 milliseconds, it becomes 1.8, and where it was 1.4, it becomes 2. Basically, if we connect the unit to a computer, in my case a Mac, we have a latency increase of around about 0.6 milliseconds. This is a pretty strange behavior that I actually noticed also for the camper player. I have not a clear explanation about the reason why this is gonna happen, but it is something it is worth keeping in mind if we want to have the best latency performances. So overall, the latency management of this unit is good, especially when not connected to a computer, with 1.2–1.4 milliseconds of latency, which is a pretty good value. The only cons is that the unit is not true bypass, which is a bummer for a pedal like this that I think is especially good for loading profiles of distortion pedals, and therefore it is not going to be always switched on in our pedalboard. Now, I have measured again also the latency of the ToneX pedal, which is now at around 2.2 milliseconds according to the profile you load, and actually does not change if you connect the unit to a computer via USB. This means that with the last firmware upgrades, the unit has improved its latency performances, which is a very good news. In fact, in my previous tests, the latency was a bit higher, at around 3 milliseconds. Now, let's make some math stacking together some of these pedals. Let's say that we want a pedalboard with two ToneX ONE in stomp mode and not connected to a computer, and a ToneX pedal for a profile of an amp. So we have around 2.2 milliseconds for the ToneX pedal with the profile of an amp, 1.2 milliseconds for the ToneX ONE, and another 1.2 milliseconds for the other one, for a total of around 4.6 milliseconds. That does not change even if we switch off one or both the ToneX pedals, as they are not true bypass, as I said previously. I think it is a pretty good overall value, and obviously, as I always say, we have to take into consideration the overall latency of our system, as, in fact, latency sum up. Therefore, we have to sum up to the aforementioned 4.6 milliseconds the latency introduced by other effects pedal we may want to use, or the latency introduced by our wireless system, or by the fact that we may be far from the speakers. Each of us has a different sensitivity to latency, and therefore it is up to you to evaluate if, for instance, 4.6 milliseconds is good enough, considering your sensitivity and the overall latency of your system. That's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and see you soon with my other videos about this unit. Stay tuned. Bye bye.